Unleash your inner strength to beat fatigue with Patriarch's liquid oxygen. Pure spring water, oxygenated for ultimate vitality. Refresh, detox, and empower your freedom-fighting spirit. Boost your immune system with Patriarchs, the oxygenated water designed for resilience and vitality in every sip. Use my special discount code as well to get 10% off any Patriarchs order. It's patriarchs.us/Tron. I do earn a commission every single time you do make a purchase, and it goes directly towards assisting this show. Welcome back, listeners of the T.R.O.N podcast of Randomness and Nothing. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today, I have a very special guest today, and her accolades and success speak for itself. She's an advocate for children, and she's an entrepreneur that started her own company. She's a certified speech pathologist with a wonderful history of helping children. Miss Ebony Turner-Bailey, thank you very much today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's an absolute honor. I really appreciate you carving time out of your busy schedule. You have a very interesting background, particularly with a topic when it comes to children that affects so many different families. So please, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
So I went back to school. I previously had a career in web design, and I decided to go back to school, for speech language pathology. Okay. And once I graduated, I got a job at the New York City Department of Education, where I worked for seven years.
That's amazing.
And while I was working with those children, I really enjoyed my job, but I felt like I could make more of an impact with their parents and help push them along their progress and meet their goals if I had that better connection with their parents. And I felt like I could do that in a private practice. My entire life, I feel like I've had an entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. So I was always doing something and trying to make a little bit of my own thing throughout. So this really, and even in schooling, I felt like, I'm going to do something on the side as well.
For sure.
And so I was really excited to start my practice. Once COVID hit, I was no longer able to go to work in person, and I had to parent my child like most people did, but also while working online with children on the spectrum, doing social groups. So that was interesting.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure it was.
Yeah, it was really tough.
Very challenging, very challenging, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so in that space, and once that year ended, I really pushed forward with starting my own practice, because I noticed that in New Jersey, there weren't as many therapists that looked like me. And there definitely wasn't that many in my area. Right. So I really wanted to make something accessible to people so that they feel comfortable and have a service that is necessary. So once I started my practice and got aligned with some insurance companies, I really started to get customers and interest.
Of course.
So that was alarming, but also like exciting. And
you're right. Because now it's go. Now you have
Yes, now it's go.
Right.
Now it's go. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
And so about 2 to 3 years in, I find actually, no, it was 4 years in, because I was expecting. And I found a practice, a location that I decided this was it. And so here we are today.
Wonderful.
And now I have a space for parents to come and get their services.
That's wonderful. So how big was the need, right? And that's a very interesting career pivot from the very beginning. You go from web design to certified speech pathologist. Like, did you have like a previous education background? I saw you went to Columbia University. So was it something that was always, maybe you saw that there was a need for, or was it like career, I need to pivot from this particular sector of my career? Because that's a totally 180 of what you were doing previously. You know what I mean?
That's a really good question. You know what? I was actually in this phase of, what am I doing with my life? I was kind of doing web design stuff or graphic design stuff. And I liked it, but it just wasn't.
Didn't like the fire.
It wasn't quite, it didn't like the fire.
Right.
And then I was kind of like career searching. And I was going and trying different things, observing different things. My mom actually put me into contact with some speech therapists, and I was able to observe them, and I fell in love with it when
Beautiful.
I saw it.
Wonderful.
And just another tidbit about me way back when, I used to want to be a doctor. So this is kind of it's kind of like it.
Right.
So, and speech therapy goes beyond just speech. It even goes into swallowing. So that was also an interest of mine at one point.
Right.
And so it really did kind of align. So I was like all in.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's how I got from.
Yeah, so it was always in the back. Yeah, it was always in the back of your mind, and then finally, when you reach that inflection point in life, you're like, you know what? I think I can go all in on this. Right?
Yes, I'd also like to add that this really allowed me to. My current career path allows me to use some of that graphic design experience and mend it together because I create. Yeah. So many of my materials.
Right. Beautiful.
At Prime Speech Solutions, we really try to individualize work. And sometimes we have to, create some things to interest a child and to help them expand their language.
What ages, that's beautiful, by the way, what ages do people start seeing signs of autism? Because I think people hear about it a lot, but, as far as obviously there's different levels of it. Some are more severely impacted versus others. So what ages do parents typically have to see, I don't want to say warning signs, but the heads up that there could be something that needs to be something, additional services needed for their kid?
So what I'll say is that there are signs that there is something going on. I can't necessarily say that it's autism. Mm-hmm. However, the signs that parents need to look for start as early as 6 months.
Okay.
So you're looking for, if your child alerts to noises and sounds, do they turn to look? Do they, because at that point, around 6 months of age, your child is moving their head around and they are alerting themselves to noise or they're jumping. Mm-hmm. And those are the earliest signs that, are they aware of danger? Mm-hmm. Like essentially that's what that is, or just a sound in the room.
Right.
So as early as 6 months, we start to notice, and I know that's not expressive language, but you need to listen and hear somebody speaking to you in order to have a conversation.
Right.
So that's your earliest communication capability. And then once you get a little bit older, around like 12 to 15 months, children should be able to start saying one words.
Right.
I'm sorry. And also at that 6 month to 9 month age, babies start to babble. Mm. And so if you're engaging in that babble with them, then they should, while you're goo goo gaga or talking to them, because I like to tell them, continue to speak, continue to use your language, because that's what they're going to use beyond this age.
Well, somehow it worked out because my kids don't say the words that I was saying.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, very. I am too. Trust me, because I'm like, ooh, shouldn't have said that.
But listen, parenting is a learning experience, and it's a fun experience, especially if you open your mind to. This was actually fun. Yesterday was fun. If I look at it,
no 4-letter words for my kids. I give them credit.
Good job.
Sorry.
Good job.
Yeah. Please continue.
So what you want to do is when they're at that stage and you're goo gaga with them, or you're having a conversation, you want to notice if they're actually trying to have a conversation back.
Yes.
So are they when you're pausing and they're doing it like a conversation would look like. As they get older, around 12 to 15 months, they're starting to say words, right? Hi, mama, dada, baba for bottle or milk or something, or ball, something of interest to them, something that is said consistently.
Right.
Or they're making up little words that mean something real for them.
Without question.
And so if they're not able to quite say those things, there is some concern that you need to speak to your doctor about. And then as they get older, let's say about 12, 15. So around 2, in that age range, you should start hearing your child say 2 words. They should be able to follow directions very well. And if those are challenges for your child, if your child's not able to do that, these are concerns. These are concerns that you need to start speaking with your doctor or a professional about to expand your child's capabilities. And by 3, by all means, they should be saying sentences.
Yes.
Following directions, pretty consistently, simple directions.
Right.
And able to play with things accurately, not climbing on everything. And sometimes children who are playing with things like light switches incessantly, or again, climbing on objects that are unsafe.
Yeah.
These are all concerns that you need to speak to another person about, a professional about.
Yeah, because, I think, as a parent, I think one of the things that has to be very frustrating, is that, and I say this respectfully, is that if your kids, if you have an inner circle, if your friends have kids and the neighbors, and then there could be your kids not doing those things, now there's more, services available to be able to have resources as it was in the past where, there wasn't, those resources available for people to do that, which is why I'm glad you do that field of work. But it can be lonely because you never want to think anything's wrong with your kid, right? And then it requires a lot more attention to detail, a lot more work, and life can be exhausting enough as it is with their full-time schedule. And now you have a child who may not be progressing, at the level of their peers or your other children.
Yes. So one of the things that I want to say, especially at Prime Speech Solutions, we really try to help a parent see their own child's gifts. Because sometimes, like you said, it's a lot to be a parent. And so you feel this load of weight when you get a diagnosis or when your child is not doing what another child is doing. And so I specifically, me and my team, we are working hard to help a parent understand, hey, your child wasn't doing this when they came here. Now they're doing this. Or did you know that your child really likes music? And they're like, oh yeah, they do really sit down and, dance or whatever. And it's like, sometimes parents need that realization that they didn't have before because you're so busy in your everyday life. You're adulting. You're managing another person's livelihood. And so all of those things really cloud your vision of what your child is capable of doing.
Right.
There are times when we allow parents, depending on what your child comes in for, to sit in during a session. And sometimes they are shocked at what their child is capable of doing, of what their child knows. Right. And sometimes that exposure is like, oh my gosh, I see where this service helps. Right. I see, oh, they are capable of doing all of this. I didn't even know. And, there are times when I'm like, yes, now try it at home because we want them to be able to do more than what they are probably doing at home.
For sure.
My goal is like child advocacy, them being able to speak up for themselves as much as they can, but also independence because I want your child to be able to do as much as they can for themselves as well. Right. Because not only is advocacy speaking, it's being able to do and be a citizen.
So, and that's some of the concerns with a lot of services that are provided for people out there is oftentimes it's like once you're 18, hey, you're on your own vices. Now, obviously, people can stay on their parents' insurance to longer ages. But do you find that, based on certain needs, that this is something that somebody needs long term? And obviously, I know your primary focus is on children. Are there transition stages or does somebody get to a point where, okay, I think they can manage this on their own internally with their family because maybe the state won't have as many resources or insurance won't have as many resources, as they transition from junior high to high school to postgraduate?
So there are possibilities that you can get additional services, right? You might change from a pediatric professional to an adult professional, but definitely the need is there. Oh, for sure. I've seen, several adults that do need it and come in. And I even work with professionals who might have difficulty in those, not only professional settings, but also those social settings where they're just like, I'm not really understanding how to handle this conversation. Right. Or like these interactions with certain people. For sure. People are asking me to go out and I just, I don't. Yeah. And so, a lot of it is just helping people feel comfortable.
Beautiful.
To be able to express that first, and then also allowing them small, even just like in pediatric speech therapy or any type of therapy, right? We really try to work on small achievable moments so that they feel like they can achieve that bigger goal, which is whatever
Right.
that's challenging for them.
Now, obviously, you started your company during the pandemic, and obviously things became more exploded of what services were needed out there and how many people really didn't have either stable internet connections, social services, and things of that nature. Did you find, and you launched during a very trying time, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but on the outcome of it, right? Did you find out that a lot more people were willing to seek help that weren't previously, and that the need was much greater than even maybe you anticipated once that situation started to ebb back to his little sense of normalcy?
Yes, the need is massive, I would say, because a lot of children are now in their iPads.
Right.
So a lot of parents are having a hard time because they're giving the iPads to their children and they're like, oh, they're not talking. And so like that's
Right.
one of the things that I find that I'm telling parents, well, they need more interaction. They
Right.
need more face to face. They need more conversation from a real person.
Yeah.
They need to see your mouth and your lips move. And now we have to work on rebuilding their attention
Right.
so that it's on a person interacting with them. So I would say that, a lot of children tend to have challenges coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of social skills are things that is an area that I really enjoy building skills with. And I do notice that a lot of children have some challenges there because they're busy interacting through a screen or just watching a video,
Right.
but not able to kind of interact with their peers
Right.
because they were limited in their ability to interact with peers and learn
Right.
how to do that.
Right. And
Additionally, one last thing,
no, you're fine.
there's also like that children need to interact with peers, right? Because peers don't allow them to do the things that adults will. Adults will pacify and, allow you to be in control, right? But a child is going to take what they're going to take. And sometimes certain personalities, they don't do well with that.
Right.
And kids really need to experience that so they know how to, again, advocate for themselves.
Without question.
And sort of, learn how to just be around another child.
Without question. And I think that, because you're speaking at the same language and, you have a parent will almost be like, well, I know what they meant, or, you know what, that's my kid. Or, I can, to your point, I can, not in a negative way, but I'll give you a treat or a toy because I don't want to have this particular conversation. Whereas your peers are like, either I'm going to understand you, I'm not going to understand you. Right. It's kind of cut and dry. Right. Like, there's no really middle ground. And being a kid is challenging. Right. Because, even under the best of circumstances, and then you add, somebody who has needs on top of it. I think one of the benefits now is that more kids now are aware that kids have these conditions. I can only speak when I was growing up, like when they had kids who were in special needs, like it was, I don't say it was looked down upon, but it wasn't mainstream, quote unquote. And I hate to use that word, but there was something that was, it was just a different room for a different kid. It wasn't something that was a socially really acceptable kind of a thing, that there's part of that a lot more people are dealing with this than what you think. And there's nothing wrong with that person. Right. There's a little bit more sensitivity involved with these things like this.
Listen, you are so accurate. I think that the most beautiful thing that I've noticed growing up into now is that children are so much more accepting overall.
Definitely.
From what I've noticed,
question.
Because, there's and this is the reality that I believe you and people in our generation face, was that people who were different were made fun of. And it didn't matter whether you were,
that's it.
Had a special need. It could have been that you were just from a different place. Now it's so much more accepting, and children, it's not even a question.
Right.
They almost just understand.
Yeah, I mean, even like,
so interesting.
Like
so interesting.
Even the names, you would throw around, and listen, this is not, obviously, I think that there's a cognizance knowing that exists. And I think YouTube and social media helps. Like, kids can see kids who have those things in movies and television, and they see it on YouTube. And it's like, okay, this is just Johnny or this is just Jessica. And that's just, what they have going on, as opposed to like there's something wrong. Obviously, for severe cases, there may need to be a special need outside of the normal classroom. But having said that, it certainly has come a long way from when, you and I were growing up, and it's just like, hey, man, something bad was said about that person.
Yes, awareness is there, and amazing to watch children welcome people who are different.
So I just want to talk briefly when it came to like insurance, because obviously you find getting insurances to cover these conditions a challenge. I can't speak for when I was growing up, I didn't have these type of conditions, but I know more insurance companies are covering treatments for things like this that maybe they didn't in the past because there was a cost barrier for parents. But how did that process work itself out?
For the most part, many insurances are willing to cover these services, especially the services that I provide. There are sometimes when I have to go and get authorizations for certain disorders or and so we just go through the protocol and see how much we can get. I would say the biggest challenge sometimes could be the limitation of visits.
Right.
And so those are the things where I find the biggest hiccups for patients that may need more.
Right.
And their insurance, has a limit of how many visits per year or
oh my goodness,
those kind of things. And we really do work with the insurance company to obtain additional visits, and we fight for the parents.
Right.
At Prop Speech Solutions, we fight for those parents to get those services for their children because we know the need is very important.
Now you're obviously in New Jersey, New York metropolitan area. Do you service them just exclusively that region, or does your online services allow, across the country?
So I am licensed in New York and New Jersey.
Okay.
I currently provide services to people mostly in our local area. For our other tutoring services, which are not speech related, we do provide that.
Okay.
We can provide that nationwide if needed.
Yes.
And then for our adult, because that's also not medically aligned, we provide those throughout the country because that's nationwide. Yes.
Yeah, and like I said, it's amazing because the movies would have the joke about the person with the speech impediment, right? So but that really is a very traumatic situation for for a lot of people. I mean, I'm the first person to say I can take a good joke. Like I'm not that dude. Like I can watch a movie, I can laugh, but for some people it really is something that is stuck with them from childhood to adulthood, and sometimes they struggle with that, and it's real. And I think that having that available services, even with an adult, and there's got to be a little bit of, pride swallowing as an adult that you're still afflicted with a condition. It's certainly great that you offer that nationwide because I'm sure there's a heavy need for that as well too.
Yes, adults really, when you're working with an adult, they have to be the one who wants to come back, and sometimes that's the challenge.
No question.
Building a connection with an adult. It can be a bit challenging, but we really work hard with trying to get you comfortable so that you're willing to share and also work towards a goal that's going to make you feel better and essentially be what it is that your goal is.
So you're based in New Jersey and in New York metropolitan area. You do wonderful work. How large is your crew? I mean, your staff, how many people do you have in your employ?
Well, we are a staff of 3.
Okay.
And we provide the service to children, and mostly children.
Wonderful. And have you found that, so I always ask this of every single guest, and like I said, you also, before I ask this question, you also deal with traumatic brain injuries as well, too.
Yes. So I have done that in the past, not so much in present with, definitely not with the children that I've seen more recently, but yes. A lot of times a traumatic brain injury can affect, depending on where the infarct is, it can affect where, how a person communicates.
Oh my goodness, of course.
Their response to their attention span, their response to they could get agitated. I'm sorry.
No, because
they could get very agitated easily, and so you really have to show a lot of patience, attention, use simple language to communicate.
You may have to repeat yourself several times and do it much slower.
You may have to. Yes, and also helping them with perhaps word finding. I mean, the challenges can vary based on each person, but you are still working to expand their communicative abilities.
Yeah, it's anybody who's ever had a family member who suffered a traumatic brain injury, whether accident or stroke or things like that, will tell you that the person that they knew, yesterday, last year, last month is night and day difference of who they're speaking with, and it's I think that and I say this sensitively, there's not a lot of resources available for the person who's the caregiver sometimes, right? Because they're always talking about the person who has the condition or need obviously is at the forefront, but the person that's taking care of the person doesn't have a lot of support as well too, because they have to cry themselves to sleep because they have to still live their life and do the things that they do. And so when you have resources such as yourself to lessen that burden on people, that's a tremendous asset for their lives. So I appreciate the work that you do.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we really try to offer strategies not only to help the patient, but also the family so that they can support the patient in that because they need support.
Without question. So I always ask this of every guest because they obviously don't need me to be, get their name out there. But for the purpose of the show, where can people find Ebony Turner Bailey and Prime Speech Solutions?
Yes, please contact us online at www.primespeechsolutions.com. You can catch us on Instagram at Prime Speech. And you can call us at 908-899-3399.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is absolutely wonderful. I'm really looking forward to your continued success. And it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure that you were willing to take some time out of your busy schedule to be on the Randomness of Nothing podcast. For people who are listening, this is Ebony Turner Bailey of Prime Speech Solutions. If you like this show, please subscribe and utilize her services because she does wonderful work.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, thank you.